Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, we are coming up on the anniversary of 9/11, and I fear that we've forgotten. I'm going to address that actually on another day, but I do want to take pause here on this Friday, and I want you to ask yourself the question, have you forgotten 9/11? There will be an upcoming episode that we will talk about. We'll talk about 9/11. We'll talk about the real threats that exist or forces that exist against America, that are aligning against America as we know it. And I definitely want to talk about that. But I wanted to take this short period of time to just remind you to never forget and ask you the question, have you forgotten? I want you to be thinking on that. Now, I want to go on to a different topic. Today is going to be a different topic. I want to do something a little different. I had no idea what I was going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about Queen Elizabeth, and I'm going to talk about Marxism. I'm going to talk about a very nasty professor. A professor, where is her name? What is her name, Gabe? A professor by the name of Uju Anya of Carnegie Mellon University. I'm also going to talk about the left's love affair with dictators and despots and tyrants. And I want you to understand that we are in a fight today. We are in a fight today, not against... Let me say this. Get over this notion that we're still living in a world where it's Democrats versus Republicans. I'm not even sure that we're living in a world where it's left versus right anymore. What I do believe is that we exist in a period of time in American history where it is good versus evil. And I don't think we should be ashamed. I don't think we should be afraid to call evil what it is. I've never used this word so frequently, and I find myself finding stories and headlines where I have to use it almost daily, and I think justifiably so. I want to start off with a video clip of Tucker Carlson's monologue last night, and obviously for reasons that are concerned with copyright and all of those issues, we're going to have to break it up, and we'll stop it at times, or Gabe will stop it and allow me to speak through it. That way we don't get in trouble. But I want you to understand that, and I'm going to tie this all together. Queen Elizabeth, this nasty, despicable professor at what's this college, Carnegie Mellon University. Don't send any of your kids there, by the way. And I'll wrap all this up, and the left's, or tie it all together. The left's love affair with dictators. This is very, very important. I think this will be a very important show because we're in a fight like we've never had before. At least those of us that are living today, that exist in America today. This is a fight like we've never seen. We're going to go to the ballot box in November, and likely those of you that are listening to this program are going to vote for Republicans or going to vote for conservative. But your thought process has to be much bigger than that, because what's happening in America is so much bigger than a problem, an issue that a party can solve. We're going to have to think through our belief systems. We're going to have to understand why we believe in our Judeo-Christian value system. We're going to have to understand why the rule of law and the Constitution is important. And we're going to have to be able to define good versus evil, not based upon some social justice warrior at a college campus, some freaking Marxist, some racist bigot, but based upon biblical beliefs, based upon objective truth. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to the podcast everywhere podcasts are found. Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please share us there. We would really love to build our channels on YouTube and Rumble. Also, everywhere that I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever I am on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Facebook, you name it. By the way, did you know Facebook has no idea where their data or how their data is being stored, or it's some crazy story. So anyway, that's just a throwaway line. So just brace yourself for that news. Someone has your data, because apparently Facebook engineers have no idea where that is. Also, Please support my sponsor, Mike Lindell, at MyPillow, MyPillow.com. If you want to buy some Percale sheets, Giza Dream sheets right now, there's a special $29.98. You can go online, MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square, use the promo code Carl to take advantage of that deal, or you can give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. I mean, they've got the Percale sheets, they got the Giza Dream sheets, either of which you would love. So make sure you take advantage of that. Also, they've got slippers, anything that's that you want on that site. Use the promo code Carl. That'll actually listen. Let's be honest. It'll bless me, and I believe it'll bless you, and I believe that it blesses American manufacturing. And Mike Lindell, who's been a stand-up guy. Having said all of that, let's get to the video at hand. Here's Tucker Carlson, and again, because of copyright infringement, we're going to have to break it up. And then I'm going to talk to you about Queen Elizabeth. I wasn't going to talk about Queen Elizabeth. Listen, I have no love affair for the monarchy. I'm just being completely real with you. But I've always admired her from afar, not knowing much about her, just because everything that she seemed to be involved in, at least that I saw publicly, right, epitomized grace, epitomized class, and tradition. And I'm going to tell you why I think that's very important. But let's go to the video of Tucker Carlson. Go ahead, Gabe.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, Queen Elizabeth II died today in Scotland, as you likely know, at the age of 96. She was the longest-serving monarch in British history. She was born in one world and died in another. It's not easy to maintain your dignity while living in the public eye. Most of us could not pull it off for an afternoon. Queen Elizabeth did it for more than 70 years. I want to ask you all, she wrote shortly before her coronation in 1953, whatever your religion may be, to pray for me on that day, to pray that God may give me wisdom and strength to carry out the solemn promises I shall be making, and that I may faithfully serve him and you all the days of my life.
Okay, let's hold it there. Now, typically, guys, listen, I'm an American. You're an American, likely, if you're listening to this podcast, and you're sitting there. Listen, this was a monarchy. I mean, this lady was born into royalty and money and all of this stuff. Yes, that is true, and obviously we fought the Brits for our independence, right? So I understand that, but that doesn't take away from the fact again that this lady was the epitome of grace, and class, and also represented traditionalism. Just seeing that statement that she made upon becoming a queen proves to me that at least initially, and actually I believe throughout her reign, that she was a woman of humility. She was a woman that respected God. She was a woman that revered God, and that's extremely important.
For the most part, she did just that, and that was not a small achievement given the period she lived in. The week that Elizabeth was coronated, Edmund Hillary, a British subject from New Zealand, a beekeeper, became the first man in history to summit Mount Everest. The achievement seemed symbolic at the time, Britain on top of the world. But in fact, Britain was already over, whether the British knew it or not. To this day, Britain claims to have won both of the 20th century's world wars, but together they destroyed that nation forever. After victory came humiliation. The empire evaporated, and along with it, Britain's self-confidence and ultimately its self-respect. It's hard to believe now, but Britain wasn't always a regional banking center/refugee camp. It was a real place with a history and a language and a culture and a genuinely remarkable people. A country.
Let's stop there for just a second. This is the importance of nationalism. I know no one wants to mention that word. It's a dirty word. Nationalists, nationalists like Nazis. No, we're not national socialists like the current Democrat Party as they exist. No, we're not that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about having a reverence for your country, the place in which you were born, respecting it despite its flaws, because every country, if we're being honest, has its flaws. Why? Because humans live there or lived there at some point, and we're all flawed and sinful individuals. It's as simple as that. So having a national identity is very important. Why? Because if you have a national identity, you're willing to preserve, you're willing to protect your country, you're willing to defend your country, you're looking out for anything that would destroy your country from without or within.
In the North Atlantic, the size of Alabama, that somehow took over the world and ruled it with decency unmatched by any empire in human history. The British Empire was not perfect, but it was far more humane than any other, ever. It's gone now, barely even remembered. Queen Elizabeth II was the last living link to a truly great Britain. Today on
Let me stop it there real quick. The last living link between a truly great Britain. I want you to remember this word, traditionalism. That's very important. I think it's important for conservatives. I know a lot of conservatives are just in awe of the monarchy, and I'll explain why. I'll clarify that for some of you, and some are just like, hey, they were a monarchy, we're America, screw them. I don't get the fascination with the monarchy, and I feel like I kind of fit in between that, but I'll explain why I have a respect for sure for Queen Elizabeth II, now deceased. All right, let's go. I mentioned the word traditionalism.
Social media, the usual ghouls celebrated her death. Quote, may her pain be excruciating, a Carnegie Mellon professor called Uju Anya wrote on Twitter of the Queen. May she die in agony. Various know-nothings in the media, including a columnist at The Atlantic and a couple of employees of NBC News, seconded that thought. The British Empire was evil, they wrote, apparently totally unaware of what came after it. And speaking of what did come after the British Empire, how, for example, did Africa fare after the British left? Let's see. Uganda got Idi Amin, who was a cannibal. Rhodesia became Zimbabwe and then became the poorest country on the planet under the racist lunatic Robert Mugabe. As of tonight, South Africa is still being run into the ground by an incompetent kleptocrat called Cyril Ramaphosa. So it's hard to see.
Let's hold it. Let's stop right there for just a second. This is a very important point, and I'm not sure that you'll hear this on any other podcast, but I want to make sure that I make this emphatically clear. America seems to be hooked on the issue of race. Particularly those that are on the left, right? They're trying to make America, I think we had gotten past the racial issue for the most part. I think we were post-racial America until Barack Obama entered the White House and purposely, in my opinion, made us a racist nation yet again. And I shouldn't say a racist nation, but he did his best to make the left-wing party a racist nation. This was a guy that had an opportunity to bring us together and sought to do differently. But the reason why I wanted to stop and pause right here, because I want you to understand something. Sin is sin. There is a such thing as objective truth. There is a such thing as evil. And none of us, and I say this, I don't say this because I've made it to the top. I am far from decent and good. And when I understand who Jesus Christ is, obviously, I'm a born again believer, evangelical Christian. But when I understand the goodness of Jesus Christ and that we all are going to bow a knee to him, we all are going to account for our life, that makes me freaking scared. It makes me want to do right. It makes me want to get to know Jesus Christ. And I want to put this in perspective. This nasty professor from Carnegie Mellon, Uju Anya, I'm going to get on to her. You call me whatever name you want. I don't give a flip. We're going to get on to her because I think she's a despicable human being. She's a despicable human being. And I want to make that emphatically clear. None of us are sinless. What these leftist, the Marxist black people want to act like, they want to act as if black people never sin, as if black people never had a slave. Carl, why are you tearing down your own race? Actually, I'm not. The black Marxists are.
Any of that as an improvement because it's not
an
improvement. Sorry, Atlantic Magazine. And now, of course, the entire continent of Africa has a new master, the Chinese government. China is the latest colonial power to dominate Africa. Its subjects will be pining for the British soon, assuming they are not already. In an ideal world.
Okay, we can leave it there. Isn't it amazing? Africa has new masters. These dictators and these despots, they destroy lives, they destroy their cultures, they destroy their societies. These black ones, these Africans, right? These dictators and tyrants. Yet Uju Anya, however she pronounces her name, isn't going to say anything against them because apparently it's justified. Apparently it's justified. I'm guessing Uju Anya has no problem when it comes to the black genocide in the United States known as abortion or pro-choice. I'm sure that's what she calls it. I'm sure Uju Anya has no problem with Marxism, right? It's fascinating to me how so many black professors and these black academics, and you'll see them all over CNN, MSNBC, often espouse the belief system of a white European by the name of Karl Marx. And I will get into that in just a second. But first, again, I was talking to you about America's fascination and some conservative fascination with the British crown. And again, I wasn't going to speak on this because it's just like, man, there were times I'm not going to like Princess Di. I remember my sister really being into Princess Di at the time. And man, when she died, when she was killed, some say murdered, it was a big freaking deal, right? I remember watching that and that being all over the news at the time. Anything that happened with the British family, with the royal family, it always made big news, obviously. So many of us, even across the pond, would pay attention to that. But something, again, that I always took from Queen Elizabeth was her grace, her class, and her traditionalism. There was always this sense of, okay, this is how you handle things in the public eye. Here's a column by Joel Pollak of Breitbart. And I just want to read through some of this because he helped put it into perspective for me. Because again, I'm not monarchy. We got away from that. But at the same token, I can look at the royal family, even though I can't stand now King Charles, but I could look at the royal family and I could say, you know what? There's traditionalism there that they represent that's very important. Very, very, very important. So here's the summary. He says, Joel Pollak does of Breitbart, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II has evoked surprisingly powerful emotions in the U.S., a country whose founding document is a repudiation of the British monarchy. So why do so many conservatives share a fondness for the Queen despite our love for our founding principles, our Republican small r principles? He says, in June, I considered taking my eldest daughter to the Platinum Jubilee before sending her reluctantly or somewhat reluctantly on a school field trip to the California legislature instead. But here are the reasons that he outlines. The first reason is conservatives like the Queen, and it's a sentiment that we share with all Americans. The royal family is just interesting, and that's something that I shared, right? You remember seeing, you can't not hear about the royal family. And he just mentions all of the things that have been in the news, the drama of the Queen's family. He talks about Edward's abdication. He talks about Philip's self-sacrifice. He talks about Charles' divorce. He didn't mention Charles' affair, but he talks about Charles' divorce. He talks about Diana's affair. He talks about Andrew's perversion. You guys may know the story. He was in Epstein's book, one of Epstein's homies. He talks about Harry's disloyalty. He talks about Prince William's, his happily ever after story, and how it's both tragic and glamorous. So there are things that we can all relate to. Why? Because they're human. Even though they're monarchs, right? They are also humans. But what conservatives admire, the tradition, the sense of tradition, the sense of faith, the sense of order, the sense of ritual, all of these things are important. Understand what the building blocks of society are. Do you understand what the building blocks of society are? You should. You should know the building blocks of a civil society. What are they? What are they? They are the family. They are the church. And then the government. And then I agree with Dietrich Bonhoeffer, there should be a fourth added, and that is labor. I think there's dignity in work. I think there's dignity in hard work. And I think the fourth should be added. So again, family, that's the first thing that God created. God created the family, or structural institution. God created the family. Good or bad, they all had, they had their bad family members, their corrupt family members, their crazy family, like the rest of us have. Good or bad, family, right? And then you have the church. She was the head of the church, Queen Elizabeth. That's amazing. I didn't even know that, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, ignorant on this stuff. And I'm learning this. And now I see 2020 hindsight. Okay, it makes sense. Order. We need order. Rule of law. I mean, this is important. Ritual. The ritual of traditions, even. All of that stuff makes for a civil society. And so as conservatives, we can look at that despite disagreeing with the monarchy and say, you know what? There are some good things about this that we like. Now, this is a unique problem for American conservatives, and I realize that, and it's not coming from a sense of regret. So it's not coming from, and he explains this well in his column, Joel Pollack does. He says here, indeed, it would be fair to ask whether conservative enthusiasm for the monarchy represents a kind of regret, a sense that independence has not turned out so well after all, or perhaps even a pining for a more authoritarian mode of government. But this isn't the case at all. All right. So the Declaration of Independence was indeed aimed at King George III, he explains. But as Harvard scholar Eric Nelson has argued, the primary target of the American revolutionaries was Parliament. No taxing without representation. No taxation without representation, and not the crown. He says, indeed, before choosing to break away from Britain, many colonial leaders pleaded with the monarchy to remonstrate with Parliament on their behalf. So what our founding fathers sought to do was to address the all-powerful legislature that existed in Britain, with the system of checks and balances, with our constitution, that's why we have an executive branch. That's why we have a legislative branch that is closest to the people. That's why we have a judicial branch. They wanted to balance the scales of power, and they wanted the people to be involved. You have to understand this, that self-government requires a religious and a moral people. Very important. A religious and a moral people. It requires traditions. It requires the rituals even of religion. A lot of people, I'm an evangelical Christian. I get it. We are not necessarily, we talk about having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as opposed to organized religion. But don't sit here and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Organized religion, I don't think it's a bad thing. You learn a lot of great habits. You learn how to worship God. You learn how to treat people right. You learn how to look beyond people's skin color. You learn how to look beyond people's sin and value the individual. A lot of things you learn, even with organized religion. And as an evangelical Christian, it kind of annoys me when I hear even people of my own faith kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's just straight up annoying to me. But these are the things we can be fond of Queen Elizabeth, although disagreeing with the monarchy. We can take away the class, the grace, the traditionalism, all of the things that they seem to embody. Family unity, although we haven't seen that lately. But family unity, well, with you know what I'm talking. You know who I'm talking about. Marco, friends. All right, I won't say their names all out. Anyway. But again, everybody has their family issues. So that's one thing. Now I want to take you to this really quickly. I want to take you to this Uju Anya, this despicable human being named Uju Anya. Oh, girl, you're a sellout. How you gonna attack your own like that? And listen, she's not my own. I don't deal with despicable human beings. That's what, she my own just because she has black skin? This is, again, to go back to what I mentioned at the top. Guys, I want you to understand the battle that we're in. I'm not convinced that conservatives completely get the battle that we're in. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. This is no longer left versus right. This is good versus evil. You know what? I wasn't going to do this, but I want to do this. I just want to share before I get on to Uju Anya. I just want to share a couple of the headlines with you that were in the tip sheet. One of the benefits of being with Salem Media, we get this tip sheet, some of the biggest news of the day. Now, everybody across the board gets them. It doesn't matter what medium you're in as far as media is concerned. You can be on the left, on the right. We get a lot of the same material, and then obviously you go out and you search and you do your own research. But we're good and evil. That's the fight that we're in. So Sanctuary City, Washington, D.C. declares a national emergency over illegal immigrants. You guys have heard the stories, right? You got this Mayor Muriel Bowser now declaring a national emergency on Thursday over the number of illegal immigrants headed to Washington, D.C. In the latest hypocritical turn by Democrat-run cities. And again, this is, well, I shouldn't say again, but I'm telling you, this isn't hypocrisy. See, these people don't care that the borders are wide open, affecting those that are closest to the border, but they care when the problems hit them. That's not hypocrisy. These are just people that don't care until it affects them. They don't care what pain comes to you. That may seem like a oversimplification. Perhaps it is. Listen to this one. California teacher boasts about queer library featuring books on orgies. A California teacher in the Capistrano School District posted about a queer library in her classroom that was filled with over 100 books, some of which contain sex imagery, information on orgies, sex parties, and BDSM. The teacher at San Juan Hills High School, identified on the school's website as Danielle Sirio, is known as Flint. Flint posted repeatedly on TikTok about books in the queer library, quote unquote, and said it was available to students and has been active for 5 years. Left or right, Democrat, Republican, good or evil? That's evil. These are people that are actively grooming your children and boasting about it. It baffles me how people think that we can get rid of God in society and fix stuff like this. You're not going to fix stuff like this without God. There has to be, you have to understand where morality comes from, and that source is God. You have to understand that. And for those that disobey morality to the point of criminality, which is what this is, there has to be true punishment. There has to be law and order. I'm sorry, anybody willing to put books like that inside of schools for children to be able to get a hold of should be in jail. If this is adult activity, quote unquote, let it be the adult activity. You don't sexualize kids. You don't sexualize kids. That should be fundamental in a civil society. Listen to this. Britain's new prime minister lifts the ban on fracking. Now, Carl, why is this good versus evil? Let me share this real quick. Liz Truss has vowed to lift a 3-year ban on fracking in England, claiming that this, quote, could get gas flowing in as soon as 6 months, unquote, defying advice from her predecessor, Boris Johnson, that such a move would not solve the energy crisis. The new prime minister's decision to press ahead with fracking was part of a wider package of energy supply reforms announced on Thursday aimed at cutting Britain's reliance on imported gas. This is a good thing. I don't know what the heck Boris Johnson is talking about. Now, she does mention there's going to be price controls on electric bills. That's not going to go over well. They're going to have to figure that out. I don't know how you keep price controls and, an abundance of energy when everyone's going to be like, oh, okay, we can go crazy on energy all of a sudden. You have to let the market work. You have to let people, oh my God, my thermostat, oh, my bill was a little too high. You have to let people do the work. Stop trying to do the work in government. So we'll see if this works or not. But this is a good move. Now, why is this good versus evil? Well, because these people in the UK, they're having to worry about the winter that's coming, right? The left doesn't care about people. People are going to die in the cold. This is fascinating to me. Fossil fuels are the lifeblood of a civil and prosperous society. And you have people that want to cut them off in the name of man-made climate change. We're destroying the planet. Yeah, you get rid of fossil fuels, you're going to destroy people. You're going to kill people. And all of your fossil fuel hatred won't do a damn thing. In 100 years, you heard Mark Morano yesterday. You could do everything the UN wants or demands, all of these, everything that the climate change activists want. And in 100 years, everything they do won't even be measurable. Won't even be measurable. But they're willing to allow people to die. This is good versus evil. This is not Democrat versus Republican. We've crossed that line. We've crossed that line. The DOJ appeals decision to appoint special master over documents from Trump. They're these little corrupt punks. I don't want to stick on this a long time. These little corrupt punks. When our officials, our law enforcement is corrupt, you don't have a civil society. This is good versus evil. Kamala Harris. VP Kamala Harris. I almost forget she's a VP. It's getting like the WNBA. I forget they exist until I read a headline. Kamala Harris calls on church leaders to advance abortion rights. Church leaders to advance abortion rights. Yeah, she gave a speech at the National Baptist Convention. Is this good or evil? Why the heck would church leaders invite this pro-abortionist to give a speech in front of them? Except to say the church is I got to watch my words here. The National Baptist Convention, you better repent. You better repent. That's evil. To allow a woman to sit there and talk about baby murder in front of the church. The church should be leading. You're going to answer to God, National Baptist Convention. Unfreaking believable. These are just some of the headlines. U.S. funded study claims physics is racist because students are rewarded for being correct. U.S. funded study claims physics is racist because students are rewarded for being correct. In other words, you're being smart is a bad thing. Getting the correct answer is a bad thing. Developing critical thinking skills is a bad. I don't understand how this is racist. It's racist only because it's taught in America. What about physics in Africa? You don't think other people use physics around the world? This is a story from Daily Wire. A $500,000 grant from the National Science Foundation funded a 22-page study that used critical race theory to argue that physics was racist, in part because it rewards students for getting the right answer and uses whiteboards. Guys, we are dealing with good versus evil, not left versus right, not Democrat versus Republican, and we have to start treating these issues as such. These people are evil. These communists, these freaking Marxists that are embedded within the Democrat Party, that are embedded within academia, that are embedded within the mainstream media. These people are evil. Get used to saying it, get used to thinking it, get used to fighting it, or we will never get this country back. Are black people not allowed to understand physics? Freaking insane. Climate czar John Kerry's carbon footprint is 300 times that of the average American. And this fool is, I've got to go around the world and, do my duty to fight this stuff. Freaking moron. Liar, moron, not a hypocrite, just a despicable person, because they know it's a lie. These people, they get off on knowing people are going to die. I guess they think they're accomplishing some type of greater good. They're just evil. They're evil. You got to get used to saying it. You got to get used to believing it. Stop, when the news comes on and you see all the headlines, Trump, 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 or, this subject, this, whatever it may be, understand who the Democrat Party, understand who the left has become. They're evil. They are evil. Now, Speaking of evil, let me go to this professor really quick. Carnegie Mellon University professor Uju Anya, who you saw Tucker Carlson mention in his monologue last night, reacted to the news of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II suffering from poor health shortly before her death on Thursday by calling her a, quote, a wretched woman and a genocidal colonizer, who is the, quote, the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire, adding that may her pain be excruciating, close quote. She said, I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating. This is what Professor Uju Anya of Carnegie Mellon said. Don't send your kids there. Don't send your kids there. She deleted the tweet after some backlash, but she came back again. This was a second tweet. She said that wretched woman and her bloodthirsty throne have effed generations using the full word of my ancestors on both sides of the family, and she supervised a government that sponsored the genocide my parents and siblings suffered. No word on abortion. No mention of abortion. No mention of the genocide that she supports within the United States. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. She says, may she die in agony. May she die in agony. Listen, this is evil. This is a despicable human being. I don't care about her gender. I don't care about the color of your skin. When you get off saying that, when you're able to be this nasty and be lauded for it by many on the left, you're a despicable human being. This is a lady that's godless. This is a lady that thinks her degrees are godlike. This is a lady that doesn't understand that she will be judged by God. This is a black Marxist who follows a white European economic model. This lady is a fraud and she doesn't even know it. And she's a disgrace. This is disgusting. I understand there's a history. People don't know that blacks enslaved some Europeans too. Kind of weird. It's almost like this college professor doesn't know that slavery was universal. It's like this college professor doesn't know that Africans enslaved Africans. Africans enslaved Europeans. Vice versa. Indians enslaved Indians. It was a nasty world. Thank God for Western countries that helped get us past that nasty world. And this lady is privileged to live in it and speak like the ignoramus that she is. She goes on to say, in responding to a Twitter user who wrote to her, why are you wishing our one and only Queen Elizabeth dead? And then she responded, I'm not wishing her dead. She's dying already. I'm wishing her an agonizingly painful death like the one she caused for millions of people. I hope God doesn't give her justice, because she might die the very death she was wishing on Queen Elizabeth. Despicable. She says, this kind of post is not expected. Oh, no, someone else responded. This kind of post is not respected of your level. This is not what you say even of your worst enemy. This is what another person said to her. And then she says, F you, using the F word again, and your deference to genocidal colonizers. Again, no mention of the black genocide within the United States of America. Hours later, the official Twitter account for the royal family announced that Queen Elizabeth had died. And then after the death of the Queen's death, Anya took to Twitter yet again to reaffirm that she will not be expressing, and I quote, anything but disdain for the monarch who supervised a government that sponsored the genocide that massacred and displaced half my family, close quote. Look at the unforgiveness in this lady's heart. This lady thrives on hatred. Miserable person. Not just despicable. She has to be miserable. She went on to say, if anyone expects me to express anything but disdain for the monarch who supervised this government that sponsored the genocide that massacred and displaced half my family, and the consequences of which those alive today are still trying to overcome, you can keep wishing upon a star, as she's embraced Americanism by getting into a college university system. These people are frauds. And they don't know it. But more than that, she's evil. She's evil. I know people don't want to hear that. I know that makes people feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying that, she may be the best mom. I don't know. She may be the best wife. She may be. But in this expression, she's evil. In this context, she's evil. And we have to treat people like that. I understand this isn't normal for Republicans. This isn't normal for conservatives. But this is normal. Evil is normal for the left. They embrace dictators. Let's talk about a couple. They embrace whether they have sympathy for willful ignorance or they just love plain evil. They've embraced people like Fidel Castro, who oversaw the murder of tens of thousands of Cuban citizens. The man banned free press. This hat tip AMAC, the left's love affair with tyrants, murderers, and terrible people. So he banned free press. He banned religious liberty. He was known to imprison his political opponents. Almost sounds like J6 and the current FBI. As well as journalists who criticize him and anyone else who challenged his status quo. This was Fidel Castro. The left loved him since he's gone. Castro was also notorious for punishing his critics with long-term prison sentences, arresting human rights defenders, and endorsing termination of employment for citizens who went against him. Almost sounds like the CDC. Now, here was Obama. Obama had something glorious to say in fawning over Fidel Castro after his death. He says, the countless ways in which Castro altered the course of individual lives, families, and of the Cuban nation. He was in awe of it. Woo! I wonder if the thousands of people who risked their lives fleeing Cuba, I wonder if they were so fawning of Fidel Castro like Barack Obama was. Here was Castro's vision on education. It was stipulated that anyone who received universal education would have to actively promote Castro's government policies both during and after their schooling. Pupils were required to take government-approved courses that forbid any criticism of socialism as a way of life. Castro viewed education, listen to this, because this is the same way in which Uju Anya, I guarantee you, views education. Castro viewed education as a crucial element of his revolution and believed that universal education was the best way to create a population that was loyal to the government. I guarantee you that Uju Anya, whatever, hates the American government, but she's creating a bunch of pupils, college students that love it, that love big government. She hates America. She hates those colonizers from the UK, from Britain. Oh, man, these people are frauds. And now, what about Karl Marx? I guarantee you, Uju Anya is a Marxist. I guarantee you. This is the guy, the father of socialism, the same man that's behind much of the modern day communists and ramblings of the American left, aka the Democrat Party today. What did Karl Marx envision? He envisioned the death of 200 million people. Maybe not initially, but his writings envisioned the creation of a new superior individual who would go on to create a new society. This vision of a, quote, new man and new society, close quote, apparently involved creating a communist revolution complete with mass murder, enslavement, torture, and the subjugation, starvation, and suffering of millions around the world. Yet this is the ideology I guarantee you Uju Anya embraces. Historians have estimated that in their attempt to create a, quote, better world, unquote, Marxist and communist regimes have killed as many as 200 people in the 20th century alone. These deaths cannot be dismissed by the left as simply rogue dictators who weren't or who didn't teach the true tenets of Marxist philosophy. Marx taught his followers that it was necessary to kill a large segment of the population in order to attain the basic objectives of communism. He had disdain for personal liberty, and that was evident in his writings. He called for legislatures to or legislative absolutism of the state and advocated for a classless society. You got to understand, see, socialism cannot exist without an oppressive regime. This is what the leftists don't get, or these evil people that exist in the left, the Uju Anyas of the world. Marx supported the suffering of millions. Listen, this is why This article goes on to say, this is why I can't help but groan when American leftists praise Marx as a great thinker, a political theorist, especially when they talk about how they wish to continue his legacy. Now, Che Guevara, this is you see a lot of college students wearing the Che Guevara, people on the left wearing Che Guevara t-shirts. This guy didn't believe in capitalism. He didn't believe these people go to stores or buy the t-shirts online, wherever they get it. He didn't like any of that. He hated hippies. He hated artists. He hated free thinkers. He was known as a racist, a bigot. He hated homosexuals. He treated homosexuality as a crime. He was more than willing to kill anyone he deemed, quote unquote, delinquent. This is what's weird about the left. Everything they say that we are, they are. They are. They admire. It says here, those who admire and venerate the man today are the same folks Guevara himself likely would have jailed or even killed if they lived under his regime. It's amazing. The left's hero worship of leftists and dictators knows no bounds. Yet they're willing to criticize, like this Uju Anya, a Queen Elizabeth that was represented, or was the epitome, in my opinion, of grace, class, and traditionalism. Yet the very beliefs which I'm sure Uju Anya subscribes to are the things that she should hate, and she doesn't. This is why we have to defeat these people at the ballot box. We can't get along with them. We can't negotiate with them. Those days are over. Bipartisanship. No, those days are over. Good versus evil. That's where we are, America. Good versus evil. Liberty versus tyranny. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please, again, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, review the podcast everywhere podcasts are found: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Also, everywhere that I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. And please go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. Take advantage of the Giza Dream Sheets that are on sale. Take advantage of the Perkel Sheets that are on sale while supplies last. You get a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee, or you can call them 800-858-0263. Also, please use that promo code. Christmas is coming up. It'll be here before you know it. So if you want to do some early Christmas shopping, go to mypillow.com. Use that promo code Carl. He's got some nice slippers there. And also, you'll be supporting American jobs, American manufacturing. Lord knows we're going to need more of that. Man, you know what? Uju Anya, she didn't talk about China taking over parts of Africa either. Those colonizers. I wonder if she or LeBron James have anything bad to say about the communist regime of China. Freaking fraud. Anyway, all right, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.